Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. My wife Kyrie sent me a link to this video on Twitter.
There's a responsibility to address the inequities that have made certain marginalized communities, Black, Brown, Indigenous, poor, disabled, queer, etc. communities more vulnerable to the impacts of climate change and environmental injustice. And I think it all traces back to, all of these patterns around colonization, imperialism, and so forth that have made these, areas and communities around the world so vulnerable and on the front lines. My family's from the Philippines, and when Typhoon Haiyan hit the Philippines, climate change just became this really personal issue to me.
She said that when Typhoon Haiyan hit the Philippines in 2013, climate change became this really personal issue to her. Time magazine reported in 2014 that Typhoon Haiyan was the world's strongest recorded storm. And British Prime Minister David Cameron said the storm was caused by climate change. The typhoon killed at least 4,000 people and caused devastation across the Philippines. Yeb Sano, the Philippines' lead climate negotiator, said Haiyan was like nothing we've ever experienced before, or perhaps nothing that any country has ever experienced before. 4,000 people were killed in Tacloban on November 17, 2013. Had any of the people making these claims spent a few minutes studying history, they would have known that Tacloban's been hit by storms like this in the past. In 1912, the same year the Titanic sank after hitting an iceberg, Tacloban was destroyed by a typhoon which killed 15,000 people. The New York Times reported that Tacloban was practically destroyed. The Mail in Adelaide said it was a holocaust with probably 15,000 persons dead. And that was the second time Tacloban was destroyed by a typhoon in 15 years. During November 1897, Tacloban was destroyed by a typhoon that killed at least 7,000 people. Tacloban, the capital, was reduced to ruins in less than half an hour. The typhoon of 2013 was a repeat of 1912 and 1897. The same weather which Tacloban's always had is now described as climate change. Kyrie plotted this graph of the number of typhoons formed from Japanese Meteorological Agency data. The number of Pacific typhoons has been declining for at least 60 years. If the climate of the Philippines is changing, it's getting better than in 1912 when 15,000 people died, or 1897 when 7,000 people died. This is what happens when you combine woke brainwashing with climate superstition and an ignorance of history. Toto is working hard to teach people about climate history. You can visit him, Kyrie Caesar, Toki and Upla on the web at RealClimateScience.com.